to elect Al Gore president of the United States. Now, America must decide who to trust, Al Gore's Texas cheerleader or the one who stood with Reagan. Ron Paul, Restore America Now.
You have found it, the front lines in the information war. I'm Alex Jones, your host. We're here weeknights, 7 p.m. Central at prisonplanet.tv and InfoWarsNews.com. This transmission is listener and viewer supported, so if you believe in this type of information, consider not just continuing your membership at prisonplanet.tv, but also purchasing your friends and family memberships as we develop and build this news program that's going to have other programs built around it in the near future for deployment into the television brainwashing box system to reach the general public in their houses that are under globalist matrix control. Now, coming up, we're going to launch the first in a series of reports we're going to be doing as we go towards December 2012. Now just, 13, 14 months away, we're going to be looking at the end is nigh, this obsession in the culture with how the end is always right around the corner, so let the world go to hell in a handbasket. This type of self-fulfilling prophecy is one of the big psychological problems that could actually get this world maneuvered into a position where we basically destroy ourselves. So we'll be covering that coming up here in just a few minutes. But first, I wanted to get to a couple of other just bizarre news stories that are out there. One of them is spare body parts could be grown after scientists implant lab-produced organs in humans. And the Daily Mail newspaper reported on this. The problem is that most of these organs are grown from human stem cells, and they're artificially also harvesting them out of human embryos. So we're basically simply dehumanizing ourselves, and we are certainly more and more living in a brave new world. The Infowars.com posting of the story read, spare human parts grown in laboratories could be just years away after scientists discovered more than 20 ways of growing organs. They have already grown the bladder, urethra, and windpipe, which have been implanted into patients during clinical trials. That's certainly good news, though, if you're dying of cancer in those areas of your body. And again, that report originally came from the DailyMail.com. Continuing with one other interesting piece of news. I noticed this in the Austin American-Statesman today, and Kurt Nimmo at Infowars.com wrote a more detailed report. Border control, no, not from the U.S. side, from the Mexico side. Drug cartel demands $30,000 to let a Mexican football team come into the United States. A Mexican high school football team that was playing a Texas football team just north of Austin. So for a high school Mexican football team to come play a football game, they've got to pay the drug cartel $30,000. The criminals are now untouchable in Mexico and have bought off the police. And once you reach that level, it is just another signpost indicating the collapse of our society. So we have a lot of real problems that are actually destroying human interaction and civilization. But you can't get the general public upset about it because it's the end of the world. And that's the next subject I want to get into. Growing up, you'd see it in the children's cartoons that the world was almost destroyed, or there's an apocalyptic Planet of the Apes, or Thundar the Barbarian in the future because of a runaway comet like Elenin coming through between the Earth and Moon and causing incredible destruction. So we put together a few video clips here that go through the facts that, yes, there has been mass extinction of the dinosaurs, clearly linked to a giant asteroid hitting the planet. And yes, the Mayan calendar says that in December of 2012 that there's an end of this age, not end of the world, but that a new hearth is lit. The sun is the fireplace, and that a new age begins. And of course, Christians certain interpretations of the Bible, say that there's a rapture before the end of the world, or Christ's return, or that there's a rapture after, and this is constantly used as an excuse to not get politically involved. And then, of course, you have Heaven's Gate, where they all committed suicide, believing that they'd put on their Nike tennis shoes and drink vodka and take barbiturates and put bags over their heads and fly up to the Hale-Bopp comet. And, of course, earlier this year, you had the Christian group with Henry Camping saying it would all end on May 21st. And then when that didn't happen, he said, okay, it's going to end in October now. It's all part of this idea, this obsession that the establishment is more than happy to push on the public, that you don't have to be involved in any type of political action because the world's all going to end anyway.
In year 1994, from out of space comes a runaway planet, hurtling between the Earth and the Moon, unleashing cosmic destruction. Man's civilization is cast in ruin.
It's a way to get you to believe you're powerless and just turn control of your life over to the system. This is a self-implanted brainwashing technique being used to basically write history before it happens so that you believe that you have no power. With more on the end of the world or mega disaster fascination is a gentleman who's actually a serious individual and who's been studying it from the facts. Brooks A. Agnew is a PhD in commercial scientist and engineer with more than 17 years in several fields studying Earth changes. So I thought I would get his take on what's happening. Sir, look, I understand that big meteorites hit the Earth. The dinosaurs are extinct. We see big comets hit Jupiter. What Shoemaker-Levy. I mean, I know that comets could hit us, things could happen. My only issue is I'm always being criticized in 2000, 2003 because I didn't believe Planet X was going to kill us or that the government could hide it from us. I didn't believe back in July that Nibiru was going to kill us. Now Elenin's coming and people are like, stop covering it up. You're going to be in a bunker in September, October. We're all dead. The tail's going to hit us, and it's a little bitty comet. So, but again, I'm not saying there aren't big Earth changes and poles changing, and I know this stuff happens. I know earthquakes, super volcanoes. I know that this is a volatile planet, but at the same time, this is in the scale of millions of years, is it not? Break it down for us from your years of research.
Well, it's all about probabilities. Earth is a really small and gravitationally insignificant planet in a very large solar system. We have the Sun and we have Jupiter, which are like gravitational vacuum cleaners for us. So the odds of Earth actually getting hit by something is very, very slim. Even in open space, things will revolve around each other or they'll coalesce with each other, but a direct hit is very, very rare. Elenin is just one in a long series of, I guess, hyped would-be collisions with Earth. You're right, Elenin was a small comet, didn't have much of a tail to it. It did come from a different location than we're normally used to seeing comets, the Oort cloud. But just as it got within range of the Sun, sure enough, it began heating up, it began off-gassing, and as predicted, the loosely coalesced head of the comet came apart, and it's going to be no threat at all. It won't get any closer than 22 million miles to Earth, but there is a near-Earth object that's going to come close to Earth in November of this year, and that's MU-55, which is an asteroid. Now that's quite a bit different story, and that's going to be closer than 1 lunar distance to us, so that's probably more alarming than a comet would be.
So, and by the way, NASA doesn't deny that. So closer to us and the moon, that is like right across the street, basically, in the overall type of scales we're talking about in space. Statistically, I mean, I know they've argued that we get hit every 10,000 years by a big asteroid or every 100,000, every million. From your research, how often statistically does this happen, and are we statistically due for some type of big Earth strike?
Well, statistics can be easily manipulated. There are a lot of near-Earth objects to varying degrees, but are they in a trajectory to cause Earth a problem? We have Trojan asteroids in our own Earth orbit that are ahead of us and behind of us, but they're at what we call limits that allow them to be equal between the sun's pull and the Earth's pull. They're called Lagrange limits. And so they don't move much relative to Earth, so they're not catching up to us and we're not catching up to them. So there are all kinds of near-Earth objects that can be threatening given, destabilizing events. A close pass from another planet or a gravitational wave from the center of the galaxy would certainly be destabilizing events. What we do see, though, is governmental agencies preparing for something. The emergency alert system, which is the emergency broadcasting system on steroids. It allows them to take control of all media with the exception of the internet and cell phones, is going live November 9th of this year, the same day that MU-55 is at its closest to Earth.
Now, if the elites knew that this asteroid was going to hit with this trajectory, I would imagine they'd deploy nuclear weapons to space, which we know they can do, and knock it out or put astronauts on it to intercept it and put thrusters on it. Or could they use something like this asteroid to hit the Earth and use that as a distraction from the financial collapse that they're basically engineering? That's my issue, is that you're right. We see giant FEMA underground bunkers being built. We see the U.S. spending more than all other countries combined on underground base programs. But you go to Switzerland, they have underground bases for their entire population that are public for a statistically much smaller price, for their population. So what's really going on here in the U.S.? The Russians for a decade have been behaving like it's the end of the world. So I kind of get torn in both directions. I'm sick of hearing that every new asteroid or comet's going to kill us, or that there's some giant planet that nobody can see that's going to hit us, and I'm covering it up because I won't talk about it. But then separately, governments everywhere and corporations are doing big seed vaults buried in the Arctic Circle and armored compounds. The elites are building bunkers at their own homes. That's confirmed. What do you think they're getting ready for?
Well, I think they're getting ready for an event like that. In fact, just last Wednesday in Pasadena, there was another workshop. This is the third one in a very short sequence of time, dealing with near-Earth objects and an Earth-based response, like you had talked about a few minutes ago. Shooting it out of the sky, breaking it up, pushing it off course. These things are being considered, and it's a $48 million a year budget. So they're very serious about taking some steps toward heading off a statistical encounter of an object with Earth.
So we're always under threat. There could always be super volcanoes like Yellowstone go off and kill pretty much everybody in North America. We could be hit by a giant asteroid. It could cause a 100-year ice age. I mean, anything could happen. But the big issue you're concerned with, and I do agree with you, that the evidence is there, governments are snatching up food, seeds, building bunkers, arming themselves, and then saying anybody who tries to individually get firearms or food, we're bad, but they're good for getting ready for something. Why do you think they're putting out that particular line of propaganda, Doctor?
Well, I could be misinformation. We see the messages that are put out by NASA to their own employees. Get yourselves ready, have an escape plan, don't depend upon the grid, don't depend upon cell phones, get your families together. We care about our family and your extended family. And these are just, emergency readiness messages that go out to their own employees. Add to that the fact that we do see NASA's budget being cut on traditional programs like exploration of the moon, exploration of Venus, and yet we see scaling up of programs to deal with near-Earth objects and atmospheric disturbances, and even solar flares. In fact, just a couple of weeks ago, the Department of Defense completed a study where they determined that all 500 installations in the United States are vulnerable to a grid interrupt from a solar or a geomagnetic storm from the sun. So they're taking measures to head that off to try to remain secure during those events.
Now, you've also been a leading researcher and expert into HAARP, and I know that that's real and is involved in all sorts of manipulation, weather manipulation, over-the-horizon radar, you name it. But Doc, how does HAARP tie into this?
Well,